in defence of a subject and of a place that are very, very close to my heart. And in particular, Edith asked me to speak about my inspiration and about my approach to the classics, which comes largely through material culture. Now, I've always dreaded this day. I knew it would come when somebody said, "What was your inspiration?" Normally, people come to the classics as part of a gradual process. A year in prep school, with a teacher who taught you and inspired you over that period, or something along the lines of reading the works of an ancient author and being inspired by their words. I went to the aforementioned Little State Primary School in Swansea, and we had nobody who taught us Greek or Latin or anything of that nature. So one day, at 7 years old, inspired by the children's Fontana book of Greek mythology, I built an altar to Zeus in my bedroom. It started off a lifelong passion with the relationship between stories and the physical realm that the heroes and the gods inhabited, and indeed the stories that we then tell from the physical world of antiquity itself. Oops. Now then, many years later, when I finally made it, after a very long journey through law, economics, sales, etc., into a PhD, I came across something else that inspired me. The fact that texts and material culture, for the most part, don't agree. In fact, very often, they contradict each other. I found some marvellous quotes from authors. H.J. Rose, I think, is my favourite quote, who, when faced with the contradiction between material culture and text, said, "Homer is worth a cartload of archaeological silences." Fortunately, I didn't listen, and I kept ploughing on. If we then turn to have a look at graves to shed some light, do we get a capsule image of the life of a female from looking at a grave? Well, as you can see in this one, we have the necklace. We have a bit pale here, I'm sorry. It's a drawing of a rather beautiful carved ivory thing. You don't know exactly what it is. Either a wool carder or some kind of musical instrument. We have bottles that held perfumed oil, the mirror. And up here, these little boxes, the pixies, contained what seemed to be cosmetics, powders with different colours. A snapshot of a female life, except, and this is why this is my favourite grave, except for the fact that the skeleton was identified as being male. So, what stories do we start to tell from this? This not only stands in opposition to texts, it has nothing to do with texts. It offers us a completely different picture, a completely different story of the ancient world. And the other thing that inspires me is the fact that we just can't let the ancient world go. When it comes to the physical side of studying antiquity, the stories have an appeal that goes beyond the tales that academics tell, into the everyday lives of the man in the street. We want to pull these stories from the earth. We want to rebuild them. We want to stand in the places where the ancients stood, see the things that they saw, touch the things that they built. All those signs on sites that say, "Do not touch," are there for a reason, because there is something magnetic about the buildings of the past. I defy anyone to say, if given a chance, they turned down the opportunity to go handle some of the statues in the British Museum. The desire to touch it, to make it real, to engage with it and bring it into our lives is visceral. It's something that's a very basic human need. We want the story to go on. We bring the past into the present. And we continue to let the story build. I was really fortunate about a year or so ago on holiday. We were in the south of France and we went to see the arena at Arles, and just by happy coincidence, landed there during Roman History Week. The gentlemen here are part of a troupe of actors who take their roles very, very seriously. They research the weapons, the costumes, and the fighting of gladiators, and travel around France putting on these shows. So for a week I watched Romans engaging Greeks in the marketplace. There was a battle there. They battled in the arena. They put on a full gladiator show. And it was absolutely sold out. Because the material past is something that academics alone do not own. It's something that we all do. However, there is a problem when we come to try and understand the past by reconstructing its physicality. Very often, it says more about us than it says about the original inhabitants. For example, the site here at Olympus was excavated in the 1920s and the 1930s. They found row upon row of beautifully level, perfectly sized little buildings. Houses, quite clearly what we had here was a settlement, a classical city. And so they identified the spaces. We have a living room, we have a kitchen, we have a bathroom. So thorough was the excavation that the Greek government decided to preserve it. The walls that you see just about here, apologies for being a bit faint, are not ancient walls. They're modern walls, which they built on top of the ancient walls that they found. Now the problem is, Robinson, the excavator, was absolutely clear in his mind that he had houses. About 10 years later, the other excavator, Graham, began to disagree. He didn't think the doors were quite where Robinson had said they all were, or that there were stair bases in every single one of these buildings. But, as the site stands, it's too late. What we have here is the past brought into the present in the image of those who found it. These houses represent what people in the 1920s and 1930s thought the Greeks lived in and thought Greek settlements looked like. The opportunity to find out what they really did look like is gone, because in building these walls, they destroyed the foundations underneath. So we've got Disneyland. We've got a site that purports to be ancient, but actually reflects the modern.